second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
Can I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
Hello and welcome to episode 74 of PvA Radio. I'm your host Luke Croft, and alongside me, as always, freelance gaming journalist Cody Mellocline. Cody, how's it going, my friend?
It's going all right. How about you?
I am doing well. Also joining us today, we have Larry Two Beverages Hunt. Larry, how are you doing?
Hydrated.
Good. Hey, there's like a slapping of some sort happening in the background currently.
That's on my end.
Oh my gosh, Cody. He's going to take care of it. So apologies for that. I was like, what? I assumed that it was, no offense, Larry. I just assumed it was a child playing with something.
No, my children are in bed way before 10.
No, your kids do go to bed early. You keep a tight ship in that regard.
Why would I want them awake at this?
In the greatest hours of the day. Well, thanks for taking care of that, Cody. All right, this is PvA Radio. This is a show where we get together every week and we talk about the hottest gaming news. You can catch us live over here on twitch.tv/itishoagie at 10 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Pacific time. Every Wednesday. I don't know if I said that part. I'm still getting back into the rhythm of the rigmarole here at the beginning of the show.
Takes a little while to warm up.
Don't feel like I have it down quite yet, but if you don't catch us live there, you can watch us over on youtube.com/PvA Radio, and I believe we are now on podcast services everywhere. Sorry for the confusion last week. When we took our hiatus, apparently that stuff can lapse, and if you don't upload, they just take you out of the directories, and so we had to put ourselves back onto them. So I listen on Spotify and on Pocket Cast. We're on both of those. Are you guys on the others?
On Apple Podcasts.
We are on Apple Podcasts. Larry probably uses some weird ass. What do you use for podcasts?
I'm pretty sure we're there.
You use what?
Stitcher.
Okay, that's not too
Luminary.
weird. He uses Luminary.
The trailblazer of podcasts.
Is Luminary still a thing? I haven't heard the name in a long time. Is it?
Yeah, that's Spooked in a deal with them right now. The best spooky podcast for spooky season.
Which we are in? Do you guys think?
I think we're
approaching it.
We're approaching it. Larry, you were talking about this actually over on your stream this week. Do you think that spooky season starts September 1st, or do you have to wait till October 1st?
I used to be a strict October guy, but for me, it starts September 1 now, because the pumpkin spice latte is always here by then, and that just kicks me into fall mood whether I want to be in it or not.
Mm-hmm.
They've just been pushing that shit back more and more, though.
It's true. It's like Christmas season. Like you start
to meaning anything.
Yeah, you start to see Christmas shit coming out. I'm sure if you go to Big Lots right now, there's Christmas stuff out.
Yeah, someone on my stream said they skipped spooky season. They're in Christmas season because they go by what's in the store. So it shows up in the store. It's that season. So
Cody, are you a purist, or are you on October 1st is spooky season time? Well, I'm in California right now, and it just looks like spooky season with the smoke and haze of wildfire surrounding us, just in
Hellfire.
The seventh circle of hell. All right, guys, I am excited about this week. We got big news to talk about, so what do you say we just jump right into it?
Let's dive on in.
Oh my gosh. The dive. I don't have audio cues. We'll get audio cues at some point. I think it's obvious where we want to start this week, though, and that is with the Xbox Series S and Xbox Series X confirmed announcements, price points, release dates. So if you guys haven't been paying attention, 2 days ago, there was an Xbox Series S leak that had a bunch of details about the Xbox Series S. And rather than let the rumors linger, Xbox just went ahead and said, hey, we'll push out a tweet at around 3:30 a.m. Eastern time confirming all of those rumors. So I think I've got the tweet pulled up here. Let's See if
It's the only time I've ever actually witnessed breaking news because those are my hours.
they launched it. So look, we're talking about spooky season here. Is it an omen that they announced this at the witching hour of 3 a.m. Eastern time?
I think it's more a sign that we're in quarantine and time doesn't mean anything anymore.
Well, I think if there's any omen, it's this reply from Donger Daddy.
We are going to talk about it.
If you're not watching the video and you're listening on podcast services, go just look up Donger Daddy's reply. He's got some creepy imagery and text in another language that is basically a curse onto Xbox's head. So,
and I've got a lot of questions about it because if you go look at the dude's profile, otherwise it's pretty normal. But on this day, he decided to curse Xbox.
Who knows? Who knows? We shouldn't waste too much time at the top talking about that, though, because there is actual news here. The tweet reads, "Let's make it official. Xbox Series S next gen performance in the smallest Xbox ever, $299 ERP. Looking forward to sharing more soon. Promise." Guys, this whole next gen announcement stuff has been insanely weird due to COVID and just due to this weird like staring contest between PlayStation and Xbox with the announcement of the price, like who's gonna blink first. Did you think it was gonna be like this?
No.
I know Microsoft didn't.
No, they didn't. In fact, Phil Spencer tweeted today, friend of the show, tweeted today that they were actually planning on revealing this stuff next week, and because all the leaks, they just decided to go ahead and get out in front of it. But it's still weird that they didn't just like wait till the next morning to do it.
Yeah, that is odd. It's not like those few hours would have made a difference at that point because it's already out there and people aren't really going to see it at 3:13. It's going to get a bump in the morning, obviously, come Eastern time, but this whole thing has been so bizarre, as you said. Like, especially like I think before we kind of took a hiatus, we were talking about PlayStation's approach to or Sony's approach to releasing information through weird technical articles and Wired, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And now we know what both of them look like, but neither of those announcements has felt like, and perhaps this is because there was a lack of like a central like event, kind of like E3 in-person event like E3 to kind of house it. But each of those announcements kind of felt like it just kind of plopped on the internet. People joked about what the console looked like and then it passed on. It's just like the rollout of this information in a piecemeal fashion just seems so kind of antithetical to the hype of building up these next gen launch.
I'm gonna be honest,
consoles.
I had to just think kind of hard about what the PlayStation looks like after you said that. I know we talked about it last week, but like, I'm saying that just to say like that's how little impact it's really had on like my excitement level over these consoles, because I could have drawn you a picture of the PlayStation 4 when it got announced. You know, I was that excited about it, but
it had some actual shapes in it, so it was easier. But
well, the PlayStation 5 has a lot of shapes to it. These Xboxes, we can talk about the design here in just a minute, but I want to color a little bit of just how strange this announcement is. So, I work in the communication department of a video game publisher. We put out a lot of press releases, and timing of those press releases is like a big conversation that we have a lot. You know, like especially when it comes to like events like Gamescom and stuff, we're having to figure out like, okay, when do we want to put out press releases so that they can get the best pickup? Well, kind of what's standard for us if we're going to release a press release on our news is for news of ours, we're going to send that out at 6 a.m. Pacific time. And the reason for that is 6 a.m. is early enough that it's still probably going to be near the top of the inboxes of media people who are on the West Coast. It's 9 a.m. on of the West Coast. It's 9 a.m. on the East Coast. So, you know, it's going to be at the top of their inboxes as they're logging on to work as well. And then people in Europe are still working as well. It's, you know, 1 p.m., 2 p.m. They're coming back from lunch and they're going to see our press release at the top of their inbox. So you know, there's like a coordinated strategy for when we're going to release these things, and it's planned far in advance. And so I'm wondering like what the strategy was for Xbox's social. Like, this wasn't just their one social media guy like deciding to fire this tweet off at 12:13 Pacific time, you know, 3:13 Eastern time. I'm just curious what that conversation is like. Like, hey, these leaks, they're big, they're picking up traction. People are already talking about it. Do you think we should just put something out now? Like, why do you think that they didn't just say, let's just wait till the morning?
I don't have an answer for that beyond maybe they're just they're like, yeah, we're big enough, we can do whatever we want, and we'll still be like, it doesn't matter if Xbox news is at the top of the inbox or not. It's still getting read, you know. But but I think you're right. There probably was a strategy, but I can't begin to fathom what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like this is Microsoft scrambling. I think we've seen especially over the past few years, that Microsoft doesn't scramble very often in general. They have a vision of what they want, and they're executing. And I think, other than like obviously leaks like this, they are still executing on what that vision is in the way that they want to execute it, barring COVID related kind of catastrophes. I just don't know what difference for them those few hours make. Especially on especially on social media, where things get buried so easily, and conversations shift so quickly, and the discourse just kind of eats itself. It's like an Ouroboros. I don't know what difference those few hours make for them.
Yeah. Well, and Larry, you make a good point. Like, the reason we do that coordinated 6 a.m. thing is because we're a smaller publisher and we're trying to get as much impact as possible from it. Like, Xbox doesn't have to worry about that. Every single gaming website is talking about this. Every single podcast is going to talk about this. Like, tons of YouTube videos being made about it. But I think it's more important that you're like, okay, at least have a little bit of like normal hours where we get to kind of control that narrative, rather than people waking up to the conversation after it's evolved for 6 hours, you know. And it did, right? Like, the Xbox One S memes was like the big thing that was coming out of the announcement because of the design of it. Everybody said it looked like a drive-through speaker, and that kind of ran away. But like, you know, people on the East Coast that are waking up to this, their first encounter with the Xbox Series S was probably not. And I'm sorry if I've called it the Xbox One S. These naming conventions are like, mixing me up. But people on the East Coast are probably waking up and they're not seeing this tweet as their first glimpse of that news. They're seeing memes and having to ask like, oh shit, what did I miss? And that's just like a weird place to be, I think, from a communication standpoint. So like, I don't know, if I was working at Xbox, I would have been like, well, let's hold the tweet. The leaks are out there. The leaks are doing what they're going to do. Like, what difference does it make if we just wait till 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock the next morning and put it out then instead?
Yeah. It looks like a drive-through speaker because it's the special edition for the new Overcooked game. But besides that,
I hated everything about that joke.
I know. You're welcome. Yeah, it was odd. And I don't know why they didn't wait, but I went from not interested at all in another Xbox to maybe kind of interested, to be honest with you.
Like in this specific model?
Yeah. If I have an Xbox this generation, it's going to be the Series S.
Interesting.
I don't know if it's too early to get into that.
I do want to get to that, but let's start with let's start with all the rest of the revealed details here. Now we're not tech guys, so we're not gonna like get into the nitty gritty of all the tech specs that they released because they're just over my head, and I don't think either of you guys have much to say about the specific tech specs either. Correct?
I like the word teraflop.
Yeah, and it's a good word. Good word.
Series X is pretty powerful.
So let's talk about some things that we do know and understand. So the Xbox Series S is going to launch at $299 later this. I think today, right? They confirmed the Series X is going to be $499. And that both of the consoles are going to launch on November 10th of this year. So that's 2 months from tomorrow, right?
Pre-orders start on the 22nd of September.
Yes. So pretty much all of the lingering questions that we had about these next gen consoles have been answered. So we know a lot about the Xbox Series X. So some details about the Series S. It's discless. It's incredibly small. I don't know if you guys have seen the comparison shots between the S and the X, but when they say it's their smallest console ever, it seems really tiny. So that's cool. It does. I'll pull this picture up again. It does look like a drive-through speaker. It's fair. It's a fair judgment of it. It's a very odd-looking design, in my opinion. You guys saw the leaked images of like the cube version of the Series S before it?
No, I haven't seen that.
So like, I don't know if it was just somebody like mocking it up, or if there was like early prototypes that were shaped like just a cube. I was like, I'm kind of more into that than I am this design. But in all honesty, to me, it just looks like the Xbox One S all digital edition with just a weirdly placed black circle on it.
Yeah, I gotta say, a carryover from our discussion last week about the look of the PlayStation 5. I was thinking about it more and more, and I guess I always found like the first time any console for me was revealed, I found it odd to look at, just because it's such a new, it's so new and fresh in my mind, and also I just haven't been able to like hold it physically and kind of look at it in my entertainment center. So we talked about this briefly last week, but all this stuff is going to fade for me because I'm just going to become a regular part of my household, and I'll forget about how it looks after a few weeks.
Yeah.
It does look like, I saw a lot of people like the memes coming from this were real quality though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just the internet's meme game in general has just been incredible.
A lot of people have a lot of time on their hands right now.
That's true. I don't really know how I want to structure this conversation, so I really just kind of want to open it up to you guys with your thoughts. Now we kind of have a full picture of Xbox's release strategy for these consoles. We now understand what the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series X are. The Series S is significantly less powerful than the Xbox Series X, which is to be assumed it's $200 cheaper than the system. But you know, now that we kind of see the picture in full, what are your thoughts on Xbox as its own brand? Like, let's not talk about it in the greater context yet. Let's keep it just to Xbox's strategy.
I think this is a little disconnected, but I think it's connected enough that it's worth mentioning that both of these consoles can be obtained through a payment plan that includes Game Pass. Yes, that's the right word, I think. Sorry.
Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. So it's got like live and all that in it too.
And the payment plan is Xbox All Access.
Yes.
Which they're actually expanding to 12 new countries with this, which is pretty cool.
And that Game Pass includes EA access to EA's program as well. Mm-hmm. It's just looking at Xbox alone, it's a pretty incredible value. Yeah. It's probably going to be the most accessible that a gaming console has been at launch for the average person in a really long time. And so I just from Xbox's strategy, I think that we're looking at a really successful launch. If you want top tier, top performance, you've got that, and you've got a monthly plan with all the bells and whistles if you have to go that route. If you're okay with sacrificing the top tier quality, you just want the gameplay, then you've got this much more affordable version. I think just as a whole, it's a great strategy for a console release.
Yeah, go ahead, Cody.
The all access thing is something I really wanted to hit on, because that, with this announcement, that is the thing that I zeroed in on as kind of unlocking in my mind what Xbox is going for this generation. And we had talked about before kind of a lot of this announcement this information come out about Microsoft's vision for what the next Xbox was looking like, we were talking a lot about the concept of modular consoles. And that has sort of gone by the wayside, but I have an inkling that what Microsoft is going for more here, and the naming convention kind of tips you off to it, is I think they're viewing this more in line with how phones are handled by people. And it's not, I mean, that's not like a mind-blowing idea. Like, I think Phil Spencer literally said they view their competition as like Google, Amazon, Apple, not so much Sony. And the more I look at the information they released, the more that sort of makes sense to me. The naming convention might seem confusing at first until you consider that parents already understand the concept of iPhone S and iPhone X. Like, they know what that demarcation is, and that's in like the consciousness of a lot of parents, especially with the S. That's important because that's a deal that a lot of parents will be snapping up. And so the especially with the financing option, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of your financing plan, they offer to kind of upgrade you from an S to an X. That wouldn't surprise me at all. It just, like, a lot of this information unlocks a lot for me how Microsoft is thinking about this initial launch as kind of a platform from which to launch kind of more regular hardware releases, which they've already been doing with what we saw with the Xbox One X, and something that Nintendo has been doing forever. But I think that's kind of what they're aiming for. They're aiming for kind of this box, and we talked about this box is kind of unlocking this whole array of this whole platform, this whole service, and Game Pass is the center of that. So I don't think we'll probably talk about Sony, but they're just operating on two completely different levels here. Their goals are completely different. I have a feeling Sony will probably measure the success of this console in terms of units sold. Microsoft, I don't think will. But that all access thing is super interesting to me, and I think it gave me a lot more insight into what they're aiming for here.
Yeah, so the all access program is not a new thing.
No.
And in fact, it was, I think it's been in existence almost for the entirety of this generation as well. And they have done those upgrade programs. And I think it's, I don't know what the naming convention is going to be, but in 3 years, 2-3 years, we're going to get another console that's more powerful than the Series X, right?
Yep.
And so I totally see what you're saying, Cody, of like, they're going to say, hey, if you've got this paid off 75%, then you can go ahead and trade it in and, start a payment plan for the next one. And, you get so much money off of it and all this. So
the way they're putting it front and center here, I mean, I know it's been around for a while, but the way they're like highlighting it here is an indication of that for sure. Yeah.
The one thing that I guess, like, this is going to make me sound elitist, I think. But I don't mean it that way. I mean it as like a legitimate question of availability of these things at launch. Like, part of the reason that they're able to control and like keep these things in stock when they first come out is that there is a high price to enter into the next generation, right? So you got to pay $500-$400 for whatever these next gen consoles are going to be. But then when you scale it back and you say, oh, well, no, you can do it for $25-$35 a month rather than just paying outright. And it's not like you're paying interest on these things either. Like, that's the interesting thing. You're not paying $25 over 5 years and you end up paying $150 more for the console than you would have. In fact, I think I saw Destin Legary did some math, and you end up paying a little bit less over time for what you get in the all access than you would if you just bought all of the pieces and parts of it individually, between Game Pass Ultimate and the console itself. So, but do you think that this is going to impact the console's availability here at the start? Are they going to limit the number of people who can purchase through the all access program, or are they going to, if they could get 100% of their sales through all access, do you think they would be totally okay with that?
I hadn't even considered the console availability, because you're right. Every launch, that is an issue. And it's an issue people capitalize on. And I have no idea. I think they have to have thought about it, and maybe they're coming into launch with a much larger stock than they typically do. But it's going to be an obstacle for sure to keep the things in stock because, like you said, the price point is not going to be a limiting factor this go around.
Mm-hmm.
I have to assume they're accommodating for that.
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, they have to have projections about what they think that this is going to do, and
I'm sure the pre-orders will be an indication of that too.
Yeah. Well,
I'll be interested to see what the divide between the S and the X is in terms of pre-orders.
I'd also be interested to see what the divide between people who are just buying it outright and people who are getting it through the All Access program. But you make a really good point, Larry, that I didn't think about. Like, I think this has a positive impact on scalping because you're not going to be able to like purchase this through All Access and then turn around and sell it. I would imagine like those things have to be tied back to you in some way, shape, or form. And I don't know what that program looks like in terms of being able to pay it off early or anything like that.
And I love the idea of killing scalping consoles. Like, I get why people do it, but it just really sucks.
Especially like the time of year
it was to get a Switch.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and especially like the time of year that they're coming around, and it's just it's extra shitty when this is at the top of many people's like Christmas lists, and you've got people who are like in a back alley with a trench coat, like with a bunch of Xbox Series X's, offering them for $1,500 a pop.
Cody's face when you said trench coat.
He's got clothes on underneath it too, Cody.
And under those clothes, more Xboxes.
I think this is, there's been a lot of talk about like, okay, who's going to blink first? Like who, as far as like the pricing of these things go, I really honestly don't think because of this, Xbox gives two shits about what Sony's going to price at because they're going to win it. Like we know that Sony, and look, I'm going to make this very clear. I'm not saying that Xbox is going to win the next generation because you know what? I don't care about any of that.
I don't think they care about that.
Think they care about that either. What I'm saying is, from a price point perspective, Xbox knew going into this, we have a $300 option here that is like our nuclear option. That PlayStation is not going to have anything that's going to be able to match this that they can call next gen. Now we can talk about whether or not Xbox Series S is technically like fully next gen with regards to like its spec power and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like this is a new entry into the Xbox ecosystem and therefore is a next gen console. And I think what we tend to forget for people who like are so into gaming that they're like listening to gaming podcasts and keeping up with gaming news is that there is a large swath of the gaming fan base that does not give a rip about the exclusives that these consoles offer. They don't give a rip about the 150 games that you can play on this thing. There is a huge portion of the gaming audience that just wants to buy the box that they can play Fortnite, Call of Duty, Madden, FIFA with their friends. Like, I think we've talked about this on the podcast in the past. Like, I would be super interested to know the number of gamers who only play those 4 titles.
Yeah,
in some combination. What's that?
That's my brother.
Yeah.
He's been asking me like, what console should I buy? And I know what he plays. He doesn't play Fortnite anymore. He plays Warzone, 2K, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people, at least his age, will pretty much just buy the console their friends buy so they can play with their friends. And they'll play the same 2 games on that console.
Yeah, and
with more and more crossplay, that's becoming less and less.
Exactly.
Important.
Yeah, and that's not even an issue. Yeah, that's not as much of an issue anymore.
Yeah, and so like, look, all those people want to be able to do is play on the system that's going to allow them to continue to play the games that they want to play. Like my brother just plays Madden and 2K. Those are the only 2 games that he plays. He's probably going to get the Series S at some point when, those games aren't supported on the One and PS4 anymore. And he's going to be perfectly content. And you know what those players don't give a rip about? Teraflops.
Yeah.
Those players don't give a rip about the GPU and the RAM. And that's not a diss on any of it. Like they own their consoles for a specific purpose. And as long as they can have a box that meets that purpose, then they're totally content with it. So I think that like Xbox wasn't holding off on this news so that they could sidestep whatever Sony decided to do. They knew they had this $300 option in the back pocket, and when it comes to parents looking to buy next gen consoles and that kind of stuff, they have the data already from the Xbox One S and Xbox One X of what sells. So I don't know. I think it's a brilliant strategy just in understanding the market at large. And we that are like engaged in this space a lot, we get hung up on the minutia that probably 75% of this fandom doesn't care about.
Sure. And the market at large is clearly what Microsoft cares about. Like that, I forget the name of their events. What was the most recent one where they showed a bunch of games and they showed the first look of Halo?
The Inside Xboxes? Inside
Xbox. Like that was an indication of what they're aiming for with their exclusives. It's hitting like a bunch of smaller games, but hitting a bunch of different markets. Horror games, family-friendly games, multiplayer games, the large kind of triple or quad A, AAA exclusive like Halo. Like they are they're just playing a completely different game than Sony. And so I'm tired of the conversation around, I was tired even before this generation of the conversation around the console wars, because at this point it's not a war. They're just in two completely different countries doing their own thing
and doing it well.
They're both of their goals are completely different, and that's great. Actually, it's great for the market. And it's great for gamers. So I think that like I'm just tired of the vitriol when it comes to the console wars. And I think you're right to say that like they clearly had this option. It's a great option for people who, like you said, are just going to play the same game with their friends. That's all they want. Or for parents who want an entry point for their kids, aren't too concerned about like how many games they can play because those kids are just going to play the same games. And they can get Game Pass if they buy into the financing option, which is great for kids as well because kids will have a plethora of games to be able to play.
And I'm sure this is going to come packed in with a 14, 30 days, something.
Oh, sure.
Xbox Game Pass.
Yeah, I mean their strategy is so clear cut at this point, and the S is a truly, truly brilliant move alongside everything else we've talked about already.
The one aspect of their strategy that I think is problematic in some ways, and we've talked about it before.
Curious here. I think we may be thinking the same thing.
Is there's not really much that I can get on the Xbox that I don't also get on a PC. And for me at least, especially the Game Pass. And for me at least, that's what actually, we talked last episode, I plan to make the jump to PC. Like that was one of the biggest driving forces. When I found out that pretty much I can get all these games on PC, there is no exclusive thing tying me to the Xbox.
You can get the service itself on PC.
Yeah.
You can get Game Pass on PC. It doesn't have as many games as the console version of it, but it's still got a ton. Yeah, that wasn't what I was going to say.
Okay. Well, I'm curious now what yours is.
I do have one thing, and I don't even know if I agree with what I'm about to say. But one thing, like, I have to imagine there was some internal conversation about was, why make this an all-digital version of the game? Especially if a lot of the audience that's probably going to purchase this are the people that play those annualized titles, like I was just saying. FIFA players like to buy FIFA physically, because when you're done with it, you can trade it in and you don't need like 7 different FIFAs on the shelf because they're all the same game. Same thing with Madden and 2K. I wonder how big of a hang up it's going to be for some people that it's like this all digital console. For guys like my brother who, you can get Madden used at a GameStop for, $38 after the first 2 weeks or something like that after the game comes out. The first sale where it's going to go below $40 on, on a digital storefront is going to be months after launch. So like, I think that may be a concern. I don't think it's a big enough concern. I think they've got enough data to know that tons of people are making that jump to digital. But yeah. I thought it was interesting that they removed that. But I also think being able to tout it as the smallest Xbox is a really big part of their strategy too.
Yeah, that's not as much of a concern for me.
Yeah.
I think people are moving that direction anyway, and this is a good nudge for people who aren't already moving in that direction.
It does appear that removing that disk drive is a significant part of being able to save money, though, too. Looking at previous console changes that have been made.
Yeah, I'd love to see how much the Xbox One S all digital edition sold.
Oh yeah,
because they had that. It's discontinued now, along with the Xbox One X, which is interesting. You mentioned though, Larry, about moving to PC, so I wanted to go to a question. We're throwing in this new segment called "Let's Go to the Comments." So we get comments on our YouTube videos and stuff, and we want to be able to address them, and we love the conversation, even if you guys disagree with us. And so this comment comes from the Thinker. He says, why would you go PC gaming when the Series X will be more powerful than your PC? That doesn't make sense unless you like spending more money on a less powerful PC. The Series X will be more powerful than 90% of PC rigs in the world and less complicated. So, Larry, for you, how would you respond to somebody like that when you just said you're going to go the PC route?
So for me, the jump came from three things. And I do want to make it clear to the Thinker that this is actually a huge deal for me because I've been gaming on consoles for like 28 years. So it wasn't a small thing, but for me it was driven by three things. One was not being able to, like, Xbox not really offering a different experience than I could get on PC, like I just talked about for a moment. The other thing is although it's less complicated, like when Nintendo is releasing this little Super Nintendo, this family computer to play games on, like, you really needed a less complicated computer to do that back then because it was really complicated. Sure, PC is more complicated than a console, but in my opinion, it's not so complicated these days that it's a huge barrier to entry. But then the third thing has to do with the better specs and the better price. And I've got two thoughts on that. One is, like Cody mentioned, they're obviously setting up to release a new series of these every couple of years, and they're going to have to keep it cutting edge. Sure, it may be one of the most powerful pieces of technology when it launches, but that's not going to be true next year. That's just how these things go. Now, I actually, before Cody said that, I was still in wild speculation territory of thinking that although they aren't going to go modular, it was going to be like last generation when they weren't going to push everyone to be online all the time. And here we are. That's just where things went. I was still thinking modular might be an option, but whether it's modular or a new console every couple of years, I'm going to have to keep buying a new console to stay cutting edge. Whereas with the PC, I could just replace a specific part every now and then and still stay in pretty good shape for a long time. And cost-wise, for me, it's not straight up PC cost versus Xbox cost. It's I have to have a computer to do a lot of other things that I do. So it's PC cost in addition to the cost of the Xbox, and that's not actually cheaper for me with the things that I need to be able to do.
That's a really good point, especially like, I like to stream and I do some graphic design stuff and some video editing and all that. And like those things require a machine as well. And so in order for me to get a machine that would do those things anyway, I'm going to, be at like $1,000. And so, now look, I'm a sucker. I'm going to get the Xbox Series X. I'm probably going to pre-order it on the 22nd. I just love having the newest technology. And I do think it comes down to, it's a matter of preference, like all things. And in playing on PC, it's there's a world of games that you can only play on PC as well. That is a reason to want to own a PC. Like, I'm a huge League of Legends nerd, and you can't play League on anything else until Wild Rift comes out on consoles.
And they just really need more time to figure out how to make a completely terrible UI that you can't navigate on console.
Exactly.
And then we'll have League on console.
Exactly. That's the number one concern. So, but look, I think it's a good question. Like if really you're not concerned about having a PC to do other things, and you really just want something that you can plug and play and game on, like that's why consoles exist, and that's why I've loved playing on consoles for 30 years, essentially. What are your thoughts on that, Cody?
I mean, I'm not a PC gamer. I've never been a PC gamer. I think I think I largely agree with Larry's point that, like, if you have a PC and you play games mostly on PC, you're probably not going to be eyeing a console in general. But if you are eyeing a console, I don't think the Series X or the Series S is the one for you, primarily because you're going to be able to play most of, if not all of, the titles you want to play on PC. Microsoft has guaranteed that those ecosystems are kind of pretty closely connected at this point. What I will say is that if you're a console gamer, I've heard the argument that, like, if you want the most, like, they're billing it as the most powerful console. I understand that. I also think that if you're, like, super obsessed with graphical fidelity and, like, the highest performing machine, you're not going to be buying a console, period. You're going to be buying a PC. In that case, it will run quite a bit higher than $500 if you're really going to max everything out. But as you said, Larry, you can swap out individual parts. You won't have to upgrade every few years.
Now, one of those main parts will run you multiple Xbox Series X's, but yeah.
But as someone who's not in a place to be buying a PC, I literally don't have a place for it in my apartment right now. I was going to be buying both anyway, but the Xbox is largely appealing to me because of its services. As someone who doesn't have a PC, it's just a deal that I think it's a deal that can't be beat. Game Pass is, I would argue, literally the best deal in gaming right now.
Which one are you going to go with, Cody?
The X. The 512 gigabyte hard drive is the killer for me.
Oh yeah,
that's like 2 Call of Duty updates.
that's only a little bit of an exaggeration.
Yeah. I mean, I have an external hard drive that I'll end up using for it regardless, to add even more. But the X is the one for me.
I do want to go ahead, Larry.
Just a couple things I want to tack on to Cody's stuff there. One, Cody's right. This doesn't matter for me so much because all I play is Apex. But if you're someone that plays multiple games, that Game Pass deal is just insanely good.
I've been using it so much.
Yeah. Like, I've dabbled in it. I don't play enough to warrant the investment. And that's because I literally play Apex 99% of the time. If I played 98% of the time, it'd be totally worth it. But the other thing I wanted to say was, if I was going with a console, this generation would be the time that I jumped to PlayStation, because right now I still trust PlayStation to give me experiences that I can't get elsewhere. They have the better track record on that right now.
That's what they're selling themselves on.
And understand that I've never owned a PlayStation, not one time. So that's a big deal for me.
Big Boy Roy in the chat. Hello. Welcome. We're talking about the Xbox Series S and X. So if you got thoughts, feel free to throw those in the chat, as well as everybody else who is watching with us as well. Did want to mention one other thing here that I do find interesting. Larry, you sent us a spec sheet of the 2 consoles side by side. I don't really care about that, but thanks for sending it anyway.
I'm over here trying to find it and pull it up real quick so we can talk about it.
I did send a link in Discord, in our Discord chat, to the specs of the Xbox One X, though. And I think it's interesting to look at. Now, look, caveating all of this with, I am not a tech person. I don't understand all the flops and GPUs and, all the little minions that live inside of an Xbox that make it work.
I don't know who Terra is.
But I did pull up the Xbox One X specs, and looked at them next to the Xbox Series S, and it seems like in a lot of ways, again, not knowing exactly what I'm talking about, the Xbox One X is almost a more powerful console than the Series S is. The Series S is designed for 1440p gaming, while the Xbox One X, now we're getting into like crazy confusing territory, it has 4K gaming. The One X has more RAM than the Series S does. And so I think one of the things that they did while we were on hiatus was they discontinued the Xbox One X production, which I'm sure we would have talked about. But I think it's twofold. I think the first is like, you just don't want a bunch of multiple SKUs of consoles for yourself, like just muddying up the market. But I think the other thing is that like this Series S is supposed to be this next gen experience, but if you look at the specs side by side, they don't look that much more impressive than the Xbox One X, and some of the specs, at least from what I can tell, don't look more impressive at all. So you definitely don't want to have like an old piece of tech that seems more powerful up against the new thing that you're trying to get people to buy. And it just, look, I understand what the Series S is supposed to do. I understand its like place in Xbox's strategy, but no, it makes that decision make a lot more sense to me, because the second reason is you just don't want those optics. Big Boy Roy in the chat says, I haven't given a damn about consoles in almost a decade, but hey, I may be buying a Series S. The monthly subscription service is too good to be true. And it really is.
Roy, just proven the last 20 minutes of conversation. Thank you, Roy.
Yeah. And Roy is a guy who plays a lot of different games too. So,
yeah,
for him, that's a deal. That's a good investment. A good, what's the word I'm looking for? Where something is worth the money? Oh, your mic is muted, Larry. But he just said something really funny because he laughed at himself.
I thought investment worked.
Yeah. No, value. It's a good value. That's the word I was looking for. So I have this down in the slant, but we can throw it in here because I think it does impact kind of the conversation that we're having with regards to Xbox launch plans. But today that they announced that in the at holiday, Xbox Game Pass is going to include the EA Play subscription, which is normally $30 a year. Yeah. Includes their big vault of EA games that, you've got like Battlefield in there, old Maddens and FIFAs, you've got Need for Speed, you've got Rocket Arena, things like that. No additional charge, just being thrown into Xbox Game Pass. Now, I want us to rewind a little, and I meant to pull this clip to, I think it was E3 predictions last year. I predicted that EA Play would come under the Game Pass umbrella. And here we are. It's come to fruition.
You get an extra point.
So I win the 2019 E3 predictions. But look, to me, this just shows like Xbox continuing to find deals that just increase the value of their services. And the more they can partner with these big brands, I mean, look, like we said, there's a lot of guys, they just play FIFA, they just play Madden, they just play those kinds of games. Like with EA Play, you get those games in the vault. There's a lot of guys who don't care to play the latest Madden. They're going to play last year's Madden, and that's in the vault to play with these. So just really cool to see their strategy continuing to pan out.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cycling through everybody's video while we just watch them sit in silence. Big Boy Roy says, already pay for Game Pass and the price is going up $10 next month. An extra $10 a month to have a console. Why not? I mean, just for fun.
Yeah, that's fair.
There you go. All right, guys. Well, that was the dive. The dive. So let's move on to the slant. Now, this is our segment where we just jump through some of the biggest gaming news stories of the week and just give some of our brief thoughts about it. So I'm going to kick us off here. Mario is 35 years old, and if that doesn't make you feel old, I don't know what will. Oh, okay, sorry. I thought I whitelisted IGN a long time ago, but apparently I didn't. Okay, so there was a Nintendo Direct earlier this week. Where was it this week or it was last week? Sorry. Right after the show, right after we recorded the show, where they announced a bunch of different stuff for Mario's 35th anniversary. I'm just going to run through these really quick. This is from Adam Bankhurst over at IGN. Super Mario 3D All-Stars is coming out on September 18th. It includes Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, Super Mario Galaxy. Then Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury are arriving on Nintendo Switch on February 21st, 2021. Mario Kart Live Home Circuit lets you race through your home. This is a weird, like, you have RC cars that you can race in real life, and you can like set up courses in your living room and race through them. If it wasn't a part of this whole rundown, we probably would have put this in the offbeat section because it was just weird. Game & Watch the Super Mario Bros. Game & Watch Super Mario Bros. Brings classic games to a modern take on a classic device. So it's like a little handheld thing that you can play old Super Mario games. A Super Mario Battle Royale because everybody was asking for that. Super Mario.
I'm gonna wreck some kids.
Super Mario All-Stars was released the day of the Direct, which included Mario Bros, Super Mario Bros 2, Super Mario Bros 3, and then the Lost Levels, and then some in-game stuff as well. Guys, just want to pass this over to you, let you hit on anything that jumped out to you in this Direct.
Big Boy Roy is very excited about 3D All-Stars, but he says, I don't think I'll ever understand the limited release angle.
That's the only thing that jumped out to me.
Go for it.
So the game will be getting a limited physical release as well as a limited digital release.
They can only print so many digital copies, Cody.
Yes. So they'll be limiting it with like limited amounts of keys, like digital keys. And it's limited, I believe. You can only purchase it on the Nintendo Store up until the end of March 2021, I think. This is a pretty artificial way of creating high demand for your product. That's what my initial response was, because you've seen it like jump to the top of the store immediately.
So, if I'm reading this correctly, there will be a limited physical release in the sense of like limited units.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like the digital one is limited in terms of numbers. It's just limited in that after March 31st, it will leave the store.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think it makes any more sense to say it that way, but I just want to avoid confusion. Odd. It's not like you're going to jump in on like February 8th and it's like, oh shit, we already sold, 20,000 copies. Sorry, you're out of luck.
I just don't.
Big Boy Roy.
Why?
Big Boy Roy says there are already scalpers posting their physical release for $100 to $120.
I was going to say it's a great way to earn some money by selling the game. It's also another great way to make your Switch instantly more valuable.
Yeah.
But look, it's this is what Nintendo has found a lot of success with over the last few years. I mean, when you look at the mini, I can't remember what they were called now, like the mini NESs and SNESs.
Yeah.
Those
limited as well, I guess.
Yeah, releasing those in a limited fashion, and look how those things sold. I mean, I was at GameStop when the NES came out. We couldn't keep the thing on the shelf. Like, we had people calling, like asking every single day if we got more in. There was the Nintendo Switch shortage over the summer too, with COVID-19 and like the limited production, and they were sold out left and right every single place. Like, we've seen this with their strategy when it comes to amiibos and all this kind of stuff. I'm worried about what this may mean for the future of other remasters and re-releases for their games, but I'm also worried with what this may mean for physical retail options of new games that they come out with. Are they going to limit Breath of the Wild 2 physical releases when they come out? Like, this is just kind of dangerous territory to start playing around in and find success with, and it's just getting dangerously close to impacting the way that we buy just regular games. Like, I think it makes sense for a novelty piece of hardware.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, I agree with that. Like for the mini SNES, it made sense. For this, it's really strange because this is not, especially with this, because this is an idea that fans have been clamoring for forever. Once the Switch came out, at least since the Switch came out, they have wanted to play some of these classic Mario games, the 3D Mario games on the console. I just think it's really unfriendly to consumers, especially anyone like. What if I do want to? I don't have a Switch when it comes out, and I get a Switch, and I kind of want to work through the backlog of Mario games, and I want to experience that history of Nintendo. Nintendo has a great history of titles, and it's celebrating its 35th anniversary of Mario by limiting that history, the span and the span that you can experience that history in. It just seems really, really odd for this kind of release as opposed to a novelty console or an amiibo or something like that.
And it's scarcity that drives the sale and the popularity for sure. But we talked about this back on Player 3 podcast back in the day. But Nintendo drives scarcity to the point that they sometimes shoot themselves in the foot. And it's like, you could have sold a lot more of these if you had just made a few more. And for me, they also went after emulators a few years ago, pretty severely. And I get that if you're going to make your backlog available, but if you're not, like, why erase yourself from gaming history like that?
Yeah, I have I have some eBay listings pulled up here. So yeah, $100, $110, $90, $90, $100 further down, $120. It's listed like, and we're what, a week and a half away from the game actually being out. So these are people who have secured pre-orders that are already turning around to try to sell the game. Big Boy Roy agrees. He says, I also just can't imagine they could make more money forcing people to buy it in a 4-month gap than having it be on a digital storefront for years. I don't know. Like,
it's selling really well.
I also think about the Disney Vault.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's not a new strategy by any means. I think it's a new strategy digitally. Now, we've seen this strategy plenty of times with like subscription services, like, hey, you need to watch this now because it's going to be gone from this service at this date or whatever. And, that seems to work. But as far as like, I don't know, like Big Boy Roy, I'm just not sure that the numbers realistically are going to pan out the way that you think. Like digital sales, most games make all of their money, make them 90% of their money in the first 2 weeks of release. Every game that comes out is pretty much that way, unless you're looking at some anomaly like Rainbow Six Siege or these like games of services that improve over time. But a game like this where it's a one-time release, or The Witcher, but like these games like this, or it's just a one-time release, I think you're gonna see, like, in that 4 months, you're probably gonna compel a lot more people than you would over the lifetime of your console. And then what this allows them to do is say, hey, it's October, we're gonna drop, it's the 36th anniversary of Mario, we're gonna drop this on the digital storefront again for a month and people can buy it. I don't agree with it. I don't think I don't think it is a consumer friendly strategy. Economically speaking, I think it's well, and it's just funny, like Nintendo has a tendency to, they just have a bank of goodwill that they seem to cash in on at all times and never really seem to suffer repercussions from it.
One day I'll rant a lot about that.
Yeah, as long as you release Zelda, Mario, and then they have Metroid, that's probably never going to come out, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
But I will say real quick before we move on, you made a joke about it and I made a joke about it, but I really am like really excited about this Mario Battle Royale. I will play the crap out of that.
So it's like Tetris 99. Is that the game?
Yeah. As you kill enemies, you send them to other people's boxes. But you pick whether it's random, the person who's in the lead, the person with the most time left, the person with the top score, like which person you're sending your enemies to, you can change that around. And you're just trying to run through the map with the most time and not die. Last man standing.
Given the sheer number of Mario speedrunners out there, this will probably be a fun game to watch people stream.
Yeah. I think I'm going to be great at it and I'll probably be like silver.
Yeah. Speedrunning is one of those things, man. People are insane about it. The Mario Kart Live thing was just really, really weird to me, but also really cool. like, I don't know. Nintendo just thinks of these weird ways to bring like AR in. I mean, we've had like Labo, which was this weird experiment where how much can we charge for cardboard and have suckers pay for it? Like,
Not a lot.
but like, this is like, how much will people pay for RC cars for Mario Kart to be able to drive around in their own houses? But what they showed of it was cool. I liked it. I don't know how popular it's going to be, but I think like going around Christmas time, people are going to, I think some kids will be like, man, I want that Mario RC car, even if they don't understand like how it works in an AR way.
Yeah.
Anything else from the Mario 35th anniversary direct? All right, let's move on. Cody, I think you got this next one.
Yeah, I actually got two quick EA stories. We've actually been talking about EA quite a bit this show. And you talked about a company that has a ton of goodwill and just continues to cash it in. This EA is not a company with a lot of goodwill, and yet it continues to try to cash it in. This story comes from The Verge. Kim Lyons from The Verge reported that EA apologized earlier this week for putting a full screen in-game ad in UFC 4. The ad came up I don't think in the middle of a match, but in the during the replay moment of a match.
Yeah, like between rounds.
Yeah.
I've got to play it here for people that are watching.
Yeah, and so I think the ad was for an Amazon show, The Boys, which is actually pretty good. And I think a lot of people got upset about it. This is a $60 game. This is a month after its initial release, and you're getting full in-game ads in the middle of a match. EA did end up apologizing for it, and I believe they have disabled the ads. But this is just we've talked a lot about the mistakes EA has made in the past. This is not by any means the most significant mistake they've made. It's just one of those decisions you wonder how it got through, how it kind of made its way through. I will admit, like, it probably adds to the realism of the match, but it's not really something that's, again, very consumer friendly.
This also isn't the first time they've done it.
No, they've done it before in UFC.
They've done it in UFC. They've done it in Madden. Madden used to have Snickers ads when you call timeouts because it was like the Snickers break or whatever.
It's just so. I mean, I feel like perhaps the objectionable part is that it's like also Amazon, which itself is a massive corporation and not exactly something that like has a lot of work-friendly or employee-friendly practices. It's just a very transparent, like, buddy kind of corporate move. And so I don't really have much to say on this other than it's kind of ridiculous.
I do think that this. I'll preface with this. I think this was really dumb and stupid and terrible. But I do think that this article really highlights the divide between how publishers and gamers view the cost of games.
Yeah.
Because the article highlights this is a $60 game. And we talk about this a lot, but we kind of need to understand that games have been $60 for like 20 years. Mm-hmm. and this was a company trying to find a way to continue to get value out of that game. And it wasn't a good move.
Well, if I'm not mistaken,
we already bought them out of loot boxes. So what else are they going to do?
But I was going to say, like, I think UFC has microtransactions in it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, so never mind. Classic EA.
Yeah, this was funny to me for what I just said of like Madden's done this before. But Cody, you do bring up a good point. Conversely, about how, like, I'm a guy who really likes realism in these games. Like, I love when they take really good care of like replicating broadcasts and stuff like that. And so I don't want to necessarily see an Amazon ad in the middle of my game, but I think there's a cool way that they could do this. Like, you know how GTA kind of does like tongue-in-cheek advertisements in their games. Like, I'd love to see that kind of stuff pop up. Like, it's just this imaginary world with these like made up products that you put into it. Like, I appreciate that kind of stuff. And you've got this in 2K. Like, I guess people are just mad because this is like disruptive rather than the advertising we see in like 2K, where it's really like put in for the realism, but nobody gets up in arms about the Gatorade ads that roll on like the on the courtside ad boards or whatever. They don't get upset. Like, you can customize the ads that you put in your arena in 2K. Like, people don't get upset about that though. But I guess because this is disruptive, it's in the middle. I don't know if it was skippable. That is more egregious.
Yeah, there is a way that it could build the immersion, but instead this was yanking people out of the experience.
Yeah. All right. You got another EA story.
Yeah, we
here.
can stay on EA. We've talked a little bit about Madden this show already. It's odd that I'm the one to bring up a sports story or sports related story.
Two sports stories.
I know. But this comes courtesy of Aaron Garst over at GameSpot. I believe he's a freelancer. Colin Kaepernick is returning to the Madden franchise. Obviously Colin Kaepernick, the former 49ers quarterback who was kind of sidelined from the league after his kind of protest in support of Black Lives Matter and social justice movements, racial and social justice movements at large. I don't think according to this story, he hasn't been in a Madden game or been even a part of the game since 2016.
There's a reason for that.
Sure, go ahead, please.
And that is that he hasn't been in the league. Since 2016.
Yeah, he has been a free agent for that duration, which is an interesting wrinkle to this story. He is returning to the game, but you can kind of move him to whatever team you want. He can become a part of whatever team you want, which I gather is probably an element of Madden anyway when you kind of mix and match players. But it's an interesting move from EA, especially because they obviously have a very active relationship with the NFL. The article wisely acknowledges that, like, it's not just Kaepernick's like likeness and kind of presence that's been missing from the games. It's like his name was literally removed from lyrics of songs in the games in prior years, which they have since apologized for. But him returning in this capacity is certainly interesting, and then the story over at GameSpot kind of shares the broader kind of PR message that Madden put out there. Fans can put Colin Kaepernick at the helm of any NFL team in franchise mode, as well as play with him in Play Now. And the message ends with, "We look forward to seeing Colin on Madden NFL teams everywhere." I just thought this was an interesting story in light of a lot of things that have been happening, not just in games, but within the broader context of society. Colin Kaepernick is a figure that, even for someone like me who doesn't actively watch football or really pay a lot of attention to professional athletics, is a figure that looms large because of kind of, he has become a broader symbol for kind of outspoken athletes and kind of social justice initiatives within athletics from players specifically. A lot of players, not even just from the NFL, have kind of used have kind of evoked his name. He's obviously been evoked in songs from rap artists and hip hop artists. So to bring him back to the NFL, to bring him back to Madden, not the NFL, in this capacity is certainly interesting and probably a very wise PR move from EA.
So actually, one of the very first gaming articles I ever wrote was for a little site called Gizorama. I don't even think the article's up anymore, but it was about how Madden could take the lead in certain issues that the NFL failed to take the lead on, and it was in response to, and I accidentally shared my screen while I was searching for his name because I didn't want to get it wrong. But in 2015, there was a Cowboys player named Greg Hardy that was pretty. He was accused of domestic assault, and it was like pretty substantiated that he had done this thing. And I basically just wrote this article about how, like, look, Madden is a force of its own, apart from the NFL. Like, yes, it is that there's like a symbiotic relationship between Madden and the NFL that has to exist in order for Madden to have its relevance, but it's not a relevance that can easily be taken away by the NFL because of the fan base that it has on its own. And that I wrote about how, like, Madden should take responsibility and say, look, even though the NFL isn't taking any action against Greg Hardy to keep him from playing in this league, Madden should say, we don't want him anywhere near our game. And this is kind of the converse of that, like where, you know, the NFL is still, for all intents and purposes, like blackballing Colin Kaepernick and keeping him out of the league. And so Madden is stepping in and using their social clout or to make a kind of their own like judgment and ruling within it. And I am all about that. I think it's a cool gesture. I think it's a cool move, and I think it's a rectifying move after a lot of the things that Madden did in order to remain compliant with the NFL's wishes. The NFL dictates a lot of what Madden can and can't have in their games. Like, there's no like late hit penalties there. If you play Madden, you'll notice there's no concussion injuries that happen in the game because the NFL forced them to remove concussion injuries from the game. So this is cool for Madden to like go against the grain of the NFL in some ways, even though the NFL is starting to warm up to the idea of Kaepernick again, and even Goodell and all of his slimy, you know, sliminess is talked about how they did Kaepernick wrong. So I'm saying all this to caveat the next thing I'm going to say, which is the rating that they gave him in the game makes absolutely no sense. It's like really weird. Like, they gave him an 81. So in Madden, it's 1 to 99 is your rating scale, and it's a composite of like all of your stats put together into this overall rating. Kaepernick hasn't taken an NFL snap in like 4 years, right? He did like a workout for some owners last year as a part of some sort of settlement that he had with the NFL. But he hasn't seen on-field action in over 4 years. But yet he's more highly rated than 13 starting NFL quarterbacks in the game, including former NFL MVP Cam Newton, which...
So is this based on his stats from prior to him?
I don't know what it's based on, because, you know, like, so they'll base like the rookie stats on like their college, like the rookie ratings on like college stats and their combine, and then they'll do like the NFL's on their previous year's performance and stuff like that. Well, Kaepernick hasn't played for 4 years. There has to be some like degradation in ability from not having played against NFL talent for 4 years. So it's like, as much as I love the story and I love seeing Kaepernick back in Madden, and I think it's a good move, like, it's just weird to me as like a fan of Madden that they released this guy who's like so highly rated and he's going to get picked up by a bunch of people in their franchises. Like, just a strange move in that regard. And that's like neither here nor there in the grand scheme of the conversation, but I'd be remiss if I didn't at least bring it up.
So for me, this was it would be one thing if they just removed him from the game, but when I read that they had removed him from the song lyrics too, that was just a level of removing from the game that was a little over the top. And I'm glad it happened that they're bringing him in the game. But I'm also not going to strain my arm patting him on the back for it, because this is very much this decision to go against the grain wasn't made until it became a lot more popular to go against the grain. And so, you know, I'm glad it happened, but I'm also like, great job on these guys. But I will say great job on consumers on being the type of people that will drive a corporation to do the right thing. That will make, we always say that, you know, if you want to change what these game companies do, you hit them in the wallet. And it's good that the Madden audience is something they've looked at and evaluated as an audience that would like to see this.
Also, it's worth pointing out, so that as part of that, this kind of bringing him back. They've also added a bunch of new player celebrations, and one of them is the Black Power fist. A company understanding what that symbol means and the context in which it exists is different than the story we talked about last week with Ubisoft. I mean, this is still ultimately like a corporation, like profiting off of Black lives, digital, in this case, digital Black lives, and the symbol of a social movement. But it's worth pointing out that it is in the game as well.
Yeah. All right. Next story, Larry. This is you because we talked about EA Play already.
Okay. So we don't have to spend a lot of time on this. I just, as sort of a follow up to last week, we talked about Halo Infinite and its removal. For me, Halo Infinite was a really big deal in terms of it was going to be a launch title for Xbox. And last generation, the launch titles were abysmal. You had Rise for a couple months until Titanfall 2 came out. That was pretty much it. But I sent you guys a link to a GameSpot article from Jordan Ramey. And it just lists the things that are going to be present at launch and the things that are going to be added shortly after launch. And just I have two quick questions we can hit real fast. One, how big of a hit is the loss of Halo Infinite in this collection of games? How much does it actually matter? And two, which game are you most excited about from the launch lineup?
The loss of Halo, absolutely massive. I mean, like, obviously, Halo has been a system seller for Xbox for a long time, since the original Xbox. So for that to be not just outside of this launch lineup of games that are coming out on the day of launch, but outside of even the at or around launch, it's not on this list either, right?
Right.
So I think that's a big hit. Now, look, launch lineups are vastly unimpressive, really, regardless. So I don't get too hung up on this stuff. I also think this list is kind of incomplete because I don't see Madden on here either, and Madden is going to have their updated like Series S PS5 update coming out, and I think you're going to see a lot of like Series X enhanced updates coming for existing games and stuff like that.
Some have already been announced.
I think this matters a lot less, especially given what Phil Spencer said about like they're not leaving behind the Xbox One S in all of this either. But yeah, so I'm not too concerned about what's here as far as what I'm most excited about. Like, I don't know, Fortnite. I'm just kidding. There's nothing here that's like calling my name. I'm gonna be totally honest with you. Big Boy Roy says Yakuza and Legion are about all I'm excited for. Watch Dogs Legion is going to be cool, but like it's coming out. Is the full release even like on PS4 and Xbox One on the 10th as well?
Yeah, it's on all of those.
So yeah.
Yeah, Halo is obviously the thing everybody had pegged the Xbox launch lineup as kind of coming with. So it is a massive hit. There's not much more that I can say about that. I'll miss it. Yeah. But I am glad. I'm always glad for delays, honestly. Obviously, I think for the quality of the game, at least, not necessarily for the health of the developers involved. But I'm gonna be honest. The only game I'm gonna be playing, it comes out after the 10th, but the only game I'm really gonna be playing around this time is Cyberpunk 2077.
Is that on this list?
It's not. It launches the 19th, but they've already announced an enhanced version for next gen.
Yeah.
Like an update or whatever it'll be. That's literally the only thing I'll be playing for most of the fall. So, but of the games they have on here, I will say Yakuza looks rad. Legion looks extremely ambitious. We talked about that quite a bit before we took our hiatus. And then we didn't talk about Valhalla when the details were announced, but Valhalla looks fun. It looks like a lot more Odyssey just with Vikings, and so I probably will end up playing that as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth pointing out, like, and that article points it out too, like, it's not like these are the only games you'll be able to play because of Game Pass and because of like their backwards compatibility. You'll have a massive library to play, which is where this stuff really helps them. Like whatever the PlayStation, we have heard. I don't think we've heard much about what the PlayStation launch lineup is. And I imagine that will be hurting a lot more for things to play day one than Xbox will.
Parappa the Rappa 4.
How could I forget?
I don't think that's a thing, but
yeah. So the loss of Halo, like that, like you said, that is the system seller, and nothing else on this list I don't think is a system seller. So it's big in that way. But as an Xbox guy, I look at this list and I feel a lot better about it than I did last generation. Like there are a lot of games here that I would like to play, even if I might not necessarily buy a system for them. And as far as what I'm most excited about, it's real weird, but it's Everwild. I don't know why the game it's calling to me.
Everwild looks awesome.
All right. I think that wraps up the slant, guys. That's all of the hottest gaming news this week. So let's move on to our final segment, Offbeat, which is where we look at some of the news of the weird and strange goings on in the gaming industry. And we've got one story that I think is the weirdest of the weirds that we've talked about on this podcast. Doom is playable on a pregnancy test. This is from James O'Connor over at GameSpot. A lot of GameSpot today, guys. 1993's Doom has been ported to just about every device under the sun. There's even a subreddit for funny Doom ports. But Twitter user Fune, who identifies as a, quote, hardware-software necromancer, end quote, in their profile.
That's a great title.
Has been playing around with a modified pregnancy test with a replacement OLED display. At first, he was just using it to run videos like this one of the opening of Skyrim. But then he finally got Doom running on it with a mini keyboard. And unfortunately, I can't scroll down any farther to show you guys this. Let me see if I can just open this tweet.
While you're doing that, Big Boy Roy says, finally, this is what he's been waiting on.
I know. I thought you just peed on these things. But it turns out that you can do so much more. Like playing Doom. Here it is. If you're watching over on YouTube or over here on Twitch, you can now see it. Are you guys going to pre-order the new pregnancy test Doom when it launches on November 10th?
It on pregnancy test X. Probably.
I'd like to point out he put this out at 9:06 p.m., which is a more normal time than 12:13. So,
this is absurd. When you think about the technical, I mean, it's absurd in the whole entirety of the story, but also the actual, I would imagine the technical challenge of doing this as well.
Yeah.
We talk all the time about wanting to be a fly on the wall of the boardroom where decisions are made. I'd like to just be like a fly on the wall of this man's head to see, like, did he just wake up one morning and feel inspired and say, hey, I'm gonna put Doom on a pregnancy test.
Well, he was like, what fills people with fear? Doom. What could I put it on that also fills people with fear? Pregnancy test. And here we go.
Has Bethesda or id responded to this? Do you know?
There's no update on the story, and I don't see any replies here. So I do want to point out this asshole reply here. You might want to make it clear in this thread that this isn't the original pregnancy test and you've ripped out practically everything. Like, dude, I say this in the politest way possible. Fuck you. Like, obviously, like, your out of the box pregnancy test, you're not going to be able to download Zoom on it. Like, hey guys, eat 4 pieces of asparagus and like 3 strawberries and take a leak on it, and you're gonna be able to play Doom. Are you fucking kidding me, Tom Warren?
Call him out.
He's right here. You can see the tweet. Like, of course it's. Oh my gosh. Pregnancy test flying off the shelves, guys. Everybody wants to go play Doom.
My favorite thing is that at least on my version of this story, if you scroll down, there's a story outlining Doom Eternal gameplay running on NVIDIA's new RTX 3080. And so that's content synergy right there. Just the contrast.
Look how far technology has come in the last week.
I love it.
Oh Oh man, so that's your news of the weird, guys. If you want to submit stories to us, we don't claim for this show to be comprehensive. We're covering the news that interests us. If you want to submit news stories to us, you can join our Discord. Type in ! Discord in the chat, or look for the link in the description below. Feel free to join it. We have a topics category or something like that in our Discord. I'm really well versed in the structure of our Discord, but you can throw articles in. We want to see the weird news stories you guys come across as well. I don't know if it gets weirder though than Doom running on a pregnancy test, even if Tom Warren doesn't believe in the devil magic that brought it to life. All right, don't go out fucking buying pregnancy tests, guys. You're not gonna be able to play Doom on them. I guess if we have to caveat it. All right, guys, let's get out of here. We're going to wrap up the show. If you're hanging out over here on Twitch, though, feel free to stick around. We'll hang out for 10 minutes or so after the show to do a little after show. Make sure you drop comments on the video as well. We're going to try to respond to comments on the show. We're also trying to get better about responding to comments on the videos themselves. So check us out on youtube.com/PvA radio. Let's go around the circle, guys. Who are you? Where can people find you? What are you going to be tweeting about this week, Larry? Let's start with you.
I'm Larry. You can find me on Twitter at StillInFlux, and I'll probably be tweeting about some Apex. I should be in Diamond before this week's over. And I'll also be tweeting Plague Doctor curses at video game companies that run afoul of what I think they ought to be doing.
All right. Codsworth.
My name is Cody, a.k.a. Codsworth, a.k.a. Coddington, a.k.a. I was trying to think of a third one, but my brain is dead.
The C-O-double-D.
A.k.a. Cody MK. You can find me on Twitter at ProElectioneer. I am probably not going to be tweeting very much, but what I will be tweeting about will probably be more about an obscure Witcher card game that nobody has played. Known as Thronebreaker. Check it out. It's on Game Pass. Speaking of Game Pass.
Yes. Also, my name is Luke. You can find me on Twitter at @itishoagie. And this week I'm just going to be tweeting about my journey in trying to break my wife down into allowing me to buy both next-gen consoles on release. So if you're looking for advice on how to talk to your significant other, you can look at what I'm doing for the exact opposite of what you should probably be doing. So find us all there. You can find the podcast on Twitter at PvA Radio. We're trying to tweet a little bit more from there, do some topic previews, get you guys' thoughts there. So make sure you're following us on Twitter. This has been PvA Radio. If you want to watch this live, that's over here on twitch.tv/itishoagie every single Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific. If you don't catch us live, you can catch us the very next day on youtube.com/PvA Radio and podcast services everywhere. Stick around if you're here hanging out with us in the chat, and we'll do the after show. And until next week, guys, still super glad to be back, and we love you. Goodbye.
Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
Can I tell you the definition of insanity?
Would you mind me to come that shortwave radio?